I got called the intern in front of a client after running the whole pitch alone. My team laughed, so I waited until Q4 reports were due, then pulled every slide I built, every metric I verified. At the meeting, the CEO asked, "Where's the deck?" I said, "Ask your interns." He didn't say a word, but the look on his face when I walked out with the client, priceless. I was 27, working at a consulting firm in a mid-level strategy role. It was the kind of place where people stayed too long, did too little, and built their identities around job titles. My title sounded junior, even though I had been there almost 3 years, and was doing the work of people 2 levels above me. Nobody really noticed, or maybe they did and just didn't care. I wasn't loud. I didn't try to become friends with managers. I didn't go on coffee runs or tag along to happy hour. I just showed up, did the work, and left. I thought that would be enough. For a while, it was. The firm brought in a big potential client, one of the biggest they'd pitched in a long time. The kind of client that, if they signed, would lock us into a multi-year engagement worth more than a few $1 million. Leadership started breathing down everyone's necks. Our team lead, Dave, was acting like a celebrity about it. He'd stroll around saying things like, "This could be the account that changes our whole year." I remember thinking, "Your year, not our." The thing is, Dave didn't really do much. His whole job was talking in meetings, sending emails to circle back, and collecting credit. If something went wrong, he blamed the most junior person. If something went right, he posted on LinkedIn like it was all his doing. People like him thrive in places like ours, where noise is mistaken for value. For this pitch, Dave asked me to take the first stab at building the deck. That's how he put it. Just a first stab. I ended up building the whole thing. Every single slide. It took weeks. I ran competitive analysis, market research, financial modeling, rollout strategy, everything. I called vendors, reviewed white papers, even got on the phone with 2 of the client's former partners just to understand their pain points. I pulled late nights, sometimes past midnight, trying to polish the slides and clean up the data. I checked every number twice. When Dave asked if it was looking tight, I told him yes. He said, "Cool, I'll skim it before the meeting." He never did. The day of the pitch, everyone was pretending like they'd been part of it. Dave printed out the deck I made, showed it off like it was his baby. I was too tired to care. I was more worried about making sure it went well, because if we didn't land the client, all that work would have been for nothing. In the room, I was the one running the laptop. They told me to walk them through the first part, so I did. 10 slides in, the client said something like, "This is surprisingly tailored. Who's been working on this directly?" And right there, in front of the client, Dave pointed at me and said, "Oh, that's our intern. She's great with numbers." And the room laughed, like I was some cute little assistant who had just helped out. Even the director cracked a smile. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I just nodded and kept going like it didn't bother me. But it did. It stayed with me. It wasn't the first time they'd called me the intern, even though I was salaried, even though I led projects, even though I trained 2 actual interns who didn't know how to open PowerPoint properly. For some reason, because I didn't demand attention or talk about myself all day, I was still seen as the kid on the team, the helper. After that pitch, I waited. I didn't push back or try to correct anyone. I didn't send angry emails or try to prove anything. I just did what I always did, my work, quietly. But I started tracking everything more closely. I kept a private backup of the slides I made. I wrote down who contributed what, and I started clocking how often I was the one cleaning up everyone's messes. Q4 came around. We landed the client. Everyone celebrated like they'd done something huge. Dave wrote a long post on LinkedIn about collaborative effort and strategic insights. Not a single mention of me. That's when I started planning what I'd do. Our team had to deliver Q4 reports to the CEO and leadership that included a full breakdown of metrics, client onboarding updates, revenue projections, all that. It was going to be a huge internal meeting, the kind of meeting where everyone pretends they've been working nonstop when most of them were just editing each other's slides the night before. I knew the structure. I had built it the last 2 quarters. The team would send me half-finished files and outdated numbers, and I'd stay up late rebuilding the whole thing so it didn't fall apart during the presentation. Dave would send emails like, let's have the intern finalize and clean this up. He didn't even use my name anymore. That week, I waited. Wednesday night, Dave sent another one of his classic emails. Intern, can you make sure the metrics are cleaned up and visuals updated? No greeting. No please. Just that, I opened the deck. It was full of blank placeholders and sloppy notes. But the parts one had already worked on over the last week were clean, about 80% of the real value in the deck. I opened each of those slides and deleted them, one by one. Graphs, charts, footnotes, all gone. I even deleted my notes in the speaker view. Then I went into version history and cleared it out. The document was still there, still technically worked on, just hollow now. I didn't tell anyone. Friday morning, big meeting. CEO was on the call. The client was supposed to join briefly for the first few minutes to hear updates. Everyone looked sharp, dressed like they were ready for interviews. Dave was pacing around like he owned the place. They pulled up the deck. It was almost empty. The CEO asked, "Is this the right version?" Silence. Then panic. Dave clicked through it like maybe the rest of the slides were hidden. The director mumbled something about last-minute updates. The CEO looked around and said, "What happened?" I looked at him and said, "I don't know. Maybe ask your interns." Then I closed my laptop, stood up, and walked out. No yelling. No big speech. Just walked. Later that day, the client emailed me directly. Not the team. Me. They asked if I'd be open to being their direct contact, even if it meant shifting teams. I said yes. It took 2 years to get to that moment. 2 years of silence, being talked over, dismissed, used. But that one moment, watching them sit there with nothing to show, felt better than any promotion they could have given me. After that meeting, everything changed, but not all at once. When I walked out, I didn't slam the door. I didn't make a scene. I just left. It was quiet, controlled. But inside, I was shaking. Not from fear. From the kind of anger that had been sitting in my body for 2 years, just waiting. Later that day, I got 3 emails from Dave. One said, "Where did you go?" Another said, "We need to talk." The third said, "That was not professional." I didn't answer any of them. The director messaged me on Teams asking to chat quickly. I ignored it. Then I got a call from HR. They wanted to understand what happened. They said some of the team felt I had sabotaged the presentation. That word stuck with me. Sabotaged. Like I hadn't been the one holding everything up for months. Like I hadn't been the reason they had a deck at all for the last 4 quarters. I didn't deny anything. I just told HR the truth. I removed work I wasn't credited for. That's all. They asked if I wanted to file a formal complaint. I said no. I didn't care about reports. I wasn't trying to win an argument. I just wanted out. Meanwhile, the client followed up. They'd emailed my personal account. They said the leadership team was impressed by the earlier pitch and asked if I'd consider joining their strategy division. Full-time. More pay. A proper title. Direct reporting line. No intern jokes. I said I needed a few days. At my current company, things were unraveling fast. After that Q4 meeting failed, the CEO started asking questions, not just about the missing deck, but about how the client's work had been handled up to that point. Who had delivered what? Who was leading? It didn't take long for the truth to leak. One of the interns I had trained, someone I trusted, told leadership that I'd been building most of the decks for months, that I was the one cleaning up after everyone else. That Dave didn't even know how to open some of the modeling tools. More people started whispering. Things I had never said out loud started coming out of other people's mouths. HR reached out again. This time, they wanted to meet with me formally. They offered me the chance to transition teams. They said they valued my work and didn't want to lose me. I told them I'd think about it. The truth? I was done. The last straw came when I overheard Dave outside the break room talking to another manager. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, it just happened. He was saying something like, She blew up over nothing. Emotional people don't belong in strategy. That was it for me. I wrote my resignation that night, but I didn't send it yet. Not yet. Instead, I started collecting everything. Every email I had sent, every file I had created, every slide with my fingerprints on it. I pulled them into a private folder and saved them in a cloud drive under my own name. Not to sue, not to leak, just to have, just in case someone tried to change the story. Then I sat down and wrote an exit memo. It wasn't angry, it was just detailed. I listed every major project I had completed. I noted which deliverables I owned. I pointed out in bullet points what my role had actually been. Then I CC'd it to HR, the CEO, the director, and 2 senior VPs. Then I sent it and immediately followed with my resignation. The fallout started the next day. Dave tried to downplay it, said I was overstating things, said I helped but didn't lead. But the documents didn't lie. The timestamps, the version histories, the emails with my attachments, they all painted the same picture. Leadership called a closed-door meeting. Dave wasn't invited. The director went silent. HR stopped responding to my emails. I think they were trying to contain the damage. But the client? They didn't wait. They sent an official request to remove Dave from all meetings moving forward. They asked for a replacement or a direct line to me. The company didn't have an answer because I was already gone. A week later, I started my new job on the client's team, but the story didn't end there. 3 weeks into the new role, someone from my old company emailed me, a junior analyst. She told me people were jumping ship, that after my exit memo got shared around, others started speaking up. Quiet people, smart people, people who had been treated the same way. Turns out I wasn't the only intern. And it turns out Dave had been leaning on people like me for years. A few weeks into my new job, I started to relax. The client's team, my new team, treated me like a professional. They asked for my thoughts in meetings. They sent thank you notes after I delivered reports. No one laughed when I spoke. No one called me the intern. But I didn't feel at peace. Not yet. I kept thinking about the people still back at my old company, the ones who messaged me in private. One of them, Mia, had just started 6 months before I left. Smart, soft-spoken. She told me over email that Dave had already started leaning on her, calling her back up after I quit. Another message came from Daniel, a guy in marketing. He said my exit memo was still floating around. He said some people had printed it out and pinned it to their cubes like a warning. Then something happened I didn't expect. A recruiter from a different consulting firm messaged me. She said she'd heard about my transition and that her team had seen some strong references tied to my name from the client side. She wanted to talk. I wasn't looking, but I took the call anyway. During the interview, she asked, "Are you aware someone from your previous firm is trying to block your name from vendor contracts?" That stopped me cold. She said they'd reached out to set up a vendor partnership with my old company. During talks, someone she wouldn't say who warned them that I was difficult, not a team player, and emotionally unstable. The recruiter checked my references anyway. That's when she found the memo. I thanked her. Then I hung up and sat there, staring at the wall. I knew immediately who it was. Dave. Even after I left, even after the damage, he was still trying to protect his ego. Still pretending I was the problem. Still trying to erase me, like he had during the pitch. I debated what to do. I didn't want to go backwards. I didn't want to start some legal war. But I also didn't want him poisoning my name. So I gathered every email again. Not just mine, Mia had started sending me hers too. Notes Dave had written. Assignments she'd been stuck with. Comments he made in writing. Things like, "Let's get the junior to fluff this up." Or, "You're young, just knock it out tonight." I also had something else. A Teams recording. 2 months before I left, Dave had accidentally recorded a Team sync. He didn't know it had saved. In that recording, he joked about letting the intern run the pitch so I don't take the heat. It wasn't funny then. It was damning now. I gave all of it to HR, not to burn the place down, but because I wanted it on record. I told them that someone at their firm was interfering with my future jobs, that I had proof. that I wasn't afraid to use it if I had to. They asked for a call. On the call, the tone was very different from before. Suddenly, they were concerned. They were taking this seriously. They asked me to send everything. I did. A week later, someone from inside messaged me again. Dave had been removed from client-facing work. Temporarily, they said, but the rumor was that they were pushing him toward voluntary departure. He was damaging company relationships. It felt like closure, but it still wasn't over. Because then something else happened, something I didn't expect. The director, the same guy who laughed during the pitch, reached out. He sent me a message asking to talk. Just to clear the air, I said no. He wrote again, saying things had spiraled, that he hadn't realized how serious it was, that he felt bad, but there was no apology, no real accountability, just fear. He was scared I'd go public, that I'd name names. I didn't respond. Instead, I posted something on LinkedIn, just a short note. I didn't mention the company. I didn't mention anyone by name. I wrote, sometimes you don't realize how much harm a culture causes until you leave. I spent 2 years doing the work of others while being laughed at, overlooked, and labeled as junior. When I left, I took my work with me. I also took my dignity. The result spoke for itself. It got more attention than I expected. Over 20,000 views, hundreds of likes, dozens of DMs, and buried in those messages, anonymous ones, burner accounts, even were more stories from other people, people I'd never met, who had worked with Dave, who had left quietly, who had stories almost identical to mine. I started saving them. Not to post, not yet, but in case anyone ever asked me to prove, once and for all, that I wasn't the only one. 3 months after I left, Dave was fired. Not laid off, not transitioned. Fired. I didn't find out from HR. I didn't hear it through the grapevine. He told me himself. He emailed me. A short, strange message. No subject line. Just one sentence. Hope you're happy. I didn't reply, but I was, not because I wanted him jobless. I just wanted him out, away from people like Mia, away from rooms where he laughed at others while taking credit for their work. It turned out the company had launched a quiet investigation. I wasn't the only one who'd submitted proof. A former intern, someone who had worked under Dave 2 years ago, had filed an ethics complaint when she saw my post on LinkedIn. She still had the NDA Dave made her sign. He wasn't supposed to make her work overtime. He had. She still had her time cards, emails, even texts. HR had ignored her at the time. But after I left, they couldn't anymore. And then came the vendor complaints. Apparently, I wasn't the only one he tried to badmouth. Another client partner had flagged inappropriate internal sabotage in their vendor notes. He'd been trying to block other people's deals too, anyone he thought might make him look small. It all added up. When they fired him, they didn't announce it. But people noticed. His name disappeared from the org chart. Someone else started leading his old projects. New managers came in. But that wasn't the most satisfying part. 2 weeks later, I got an email from my former director. The one who laughed at the intern joke. The one who never said a word when I carried his meetings. He asked to meet. He said he'd left the company too. That he'd been let go for team performance concerns. But I already knew that. Someone else had messaged me, someone from legal, asking about documentation I'd submitted. They were quietly cleaning house. I didn't meet him, but I wrote back. I told him I remembered the meeting, the way they laughed, the way no one stopped it, the way they let me do all the work, then disappear from the slide credits. I told him I didn't want revenge, I wanted fairness. He hadn't given me that. So I gave it to myself. He didn't reply. At my new job, things got better. Slowly. I stopped waiting for people to question my presence in meetings. I stopped triple-checking every email for tone. I started saying no when I was too busy. Something I never dared do before. Mia messaged me again, too. She got promoted. She said after Dave was fired, things loosened up. People were less afraid. She started speaking up more. The new manager supported her. She thanked me, not for leaving, but for exposing the rot quietly, in a way that no one else had done. That meant more to me than anything. One day, about 6 months after I left, I got a thick envelope in the mail. No return address, just my name. Inside was a printed copy of my old exit memo. Someone had scribbled something at the bottom in pen. You did what the rest of us were too scared to do. That was the first time I cried about any of it. Not during the meetings, not during the jokes, not during the late nights or silent anger. It hit me then I had stayed too long. I had taken too much. I had taught myself to be small because it felt safer than asking for what I earned. But I wasn't small. I was just surrounded by people who needed me to be. Now, I lead a team. I train younger analysts. I make sure no one ever leaves a meeting feeling like I once did. If someone builds the deck, they get the credit. If someone speaks, I listen. And sometimes late at night, I open the old emails, just to remember. Not out of pain, out of clarity, because I never needed revenge. I just needed to stop giving my silence to people who didn't earn it. And the moment I did, everything changed.